Madam Chair. I move approval of proposed ordinance number 2012-15S. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve proposed ordinance 2012-15S. Would the clerk please read the title into the record?
Yes, Madam Chair. Proposal number 2012-15S. An ordinance of the Pierce County Council proposing an amendment to the Pierce County Charter to require at least 2/3 affirmative vote of the County Council to approve all new councilmatic tax measures and increases thereto, requesting the auditor to submit this amendment to the voters in the November 2012 general election and requesting the prosecuting attorney to draft an appropriate ballot title.
Thank you. Ms. Long?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This proposal was continued from last week's council meeting as substituted, and the current proposal would send a amendment to the charter to the voters at the November general election, and it would amend section 8.60 of the charter to require a minimum of 2/3 affirmative vote of the council let me step back. Section 860 of the charter requires a minimum of 2/3 affirmative vote of the council to enact an ordinance to amend the charter. So this proposal before you would be a supermajority vote. And what this proposal currently does is amend section 2.20 of the code to require that after January 1 of 2013, any new councilmatic tax may be levied or increased only by a minimum of a 2/3 vote of the council. And I will note that there are two amendments before you, one on lime and one on banana, for your consideration.
Councilmember Talbert, would you like to put the line amendment in front of us?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I move approval of council amendment number 1 online. Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve council amendment number 1 online. Ms. Long?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilmember amendment number 1 online would add language to what's currently before you in Exhibit A. And it would add language as follows: for purposes of this subsection, the term new councilmatic tax means a tax for which the authority to levy has been granted to the council by the state legislature after January 1, 2013, and it excludes fees, rates and charges, special assessments, taxes imposed by the council on or before January 1, 2013, and taxes imposed by the council on or before January 1, 2013, which are subject to renewal or reauthorization, such as the general property tax levy and the excess property tax levy.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Farrell?
I'm sorry, just let it go.
All right. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, this is a public hearing. If there's anyone here that would like to comment for or against proposed ordinance, committee amendment number 1 online only. Welcome.
Ken Paulson. The line amendment has the words on or before January 1st. I think this council session expires December 31st. So January 1st, I suppose it's conceivable the next council could meet and do something in an emergency. If your intent is for the next council to have a super majority, that on or in 2 places needs to be removed. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Seeing no one else, I will close public comment and return it to the council. Any final comments before we vote on council amendment number 1 online? Councilmember Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask legal counsel the words on or, could you help us understand it? And I was a bit confused earlier, and I think she has an answer for us. So
We did have that discussion. The original language of your substitute on Exhibit A refers to after January 1, provided that after January 1, 2013, any new tax, council amendment tax may be levied or increased by a supermajority vote. And so this would refer to, this provides that new council amendment tax means a tax for which the authority to levy has been granted to the council and which excludes, fees, rates, charges, special assessments, taxes imposed by the council on or before January 1, 2013. So it butts up to the after January 1 that's referred to in the section here. And we did have a discussion about whether the council would be meeting to impose something on January 1, but it could be that the effective date was set forward.
So is it your counsel that this on or is consistent with the context of the underlying?
If it just
so that
said,
it means basically the same thing as the underlying.
right, so we're not, if we just said before, then we would actually have a gap of January 1, the way this is written. And I suppose you could say before January 1 here and then go back to your underlying exhibit and amend it to say on, just so that there's not a gap of a day.
Okay, Councilmember Farrell.
Thank you.
Let me tell you where I was trying to go with this, okay? And what I'm trying to do here is basically say that this, this charter amendment that we would be doing would affect any new pieces of legislation that's passed by the legislature that allows for a tax increase that is council mandated, that is imposed after the first of the year, 2013. So my vision was where I was trying to do is something that is a result of a legislative authority that happens starting 2013 of next year. So in other words, let's say the legislature meets next session, which is kind of where I was going with this. Legislature meets next session, decides to withdraw a lot of grant funds for juvenile justice, okay, which is a good example. It's something that's always in danger day in, day out in the legislature. They decide to withdraw $2 million that normally would go to Pierce County for juvenile justice. What this would do is this would say that if they gave us taxing authority to replace that lost funding, that it would take a vote of 5 out of the 7 members of the council to do any in-house taxes to replace such said funding. Sort of as a warning to the legislature saying, we don't like how you play these games with local government, please stop. Okay? So it is not my intention to have any kind of magic date where, you know, all heck could break loose. The deal is I'm trying to do something that affects any tax. This only addresses any taxing authority that's imposed after the first of the year. This does not affect taxing authority that happens before the first of the year. So in other words, the other 0.2 of 1 cent that the legislature allowed for us in 5659 for public safety, that is not affected, nor is the 0.1 of 1% for mental health. That is not affected by this ruling. That still would only require 4 votes under the way I envision this amendment. And that's what I'm trying to do. There is no trickery or no absence here. It's just the way that the legislature does business. You try to start everything from the calendar 1 of the following year.
Councilmember Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm satisfied with the explanation the council gave because the council will not be meeting on January 1st on New Year's Day. It would basically be almost totally impossible to accomplish that if there was a desire. I think the language, when you put it in context with the underlying language that was put in there, I think it makes it consistent. So I don't think there's any kind of, I think the question that was brought up in public testimony had to do with, is there a day, January 1st, and you saw January 1st, I think the answer satisfies me that no, you really can't. I'm fine with language as it exists and commend to moment that the sponsor of it. Thank you.
Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 2 amendments here. How do they, we pass this one and then pass this one, does this supplant this one or override this one? How's that all working?
Ms. Long.
If amendment number 2, if the Lime amendment passed, and then the council adopted the banana amendment. The banana amendment would prevail because it changes the language to the Lima amendment.
Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since we brought up the banana amendment, I'm just trying to gain a good understanding in terms of difference between one just mentions the council has the authority, the other one just has authority. Is that a significant difference, or is it, are they irrelevant?
The difference between the two is that the banana amendment includes within the term new councilmanic tax, taxing authority for which the council currently has the authority. For example, the mental health tax, which was granted to counties some time ago, and Pierce County has not to date enacted that tax. Under the banana amendment, to impose that tax, which is current authority, would require the supermajority vote. Under the Lime Amendment, it would not, because the Lime Amendment only captures taxing authority granted after the beginning of the year, next week.
Councilmember Farrell.
Okay, so let me try to explain to my colleagues the differences here. Well, what the Lime Amendment does is it basically says that after the first of the year, any new legislative imposed taxing authority to Pierce County would have to require 5 out of 7 votes for passage if they were to do it in-house. What the banana amendment says is that any taxing authority not currently enacted, such as the 1/10 of 1% for mental health, or the remainders of the 2/10 of 1% sales tax for public safety that was enacted to us by 56-59, that would require the 5 out of 7 votes. Okay? So if you basically want everything moving forward, all taxing authority that is covered by the legislature, that is not a new fee, or that is not an existing fee, or something that's already on the books, then you want the banana cream pie. If you're looking to do, basically make this just for new taxing authority that comes from the legislature after the first of the year, not including the things that we currently have authority for, such as public safety and mental health, then you want to put the lime in the coconut.
Thank you.
Better? Cool.
With that,
We drag it all up.
we will now be voting on the Lime Amendment. All in favor of Council Amendment number 1 on Lime, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Chair is in doubt. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Talbert,
No.
Councilmember Bush,
Aye.
Councilmember Farrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming, Councilmember Waring,
No.
Councilmember Roach,
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald.
No.
The amendment passes on a vote of 3 to 4.
Thank you. Okay, and that brings us to Council Amendment number 2 on banana. Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move adoption of Council Amendment number 2 on banana.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Council Amendment number 2 on banana. Ms. Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This would have to be modified somewhat to what essentially, because there's a conflict, the banana amendment would be replacing what was just adopted as an amendment. So it would be striking the language that was just adopted and replacing it with this language. And I'll read that for you. For purposes of this subsection, new councilmanic tax means a tax for which the council has the authority to levy but has not, such as the mental health tax in paren RCW 8214-460, or is granted to the council by the state legislature after January 1, 2013, and which excludes fees, rates, and charges, special assessments, taxes imposed by the council on or before January 1, 2013, and taxes imposed by the council on or before January 1, 2013, which are subject to renewal or reauthorization, such as the general property tax levy and the excess property tax levy.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Councilmember Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Long, would I be correct in understanding a different way of explaining the banana amendment compared to the lime? That the banana amendment, should it be adopted at this stage, would add to the lime amendment the 0.2% and the mental health tax as into that list of ones that would take the super majority. Is that a simpler way of saying it?
That's correct.
So it would basically, it would reinforce this one that we just adopted,
Yes,
and it would add those two that we currently have authority to but have not exercised council mandate. Is that correct?
that's correct.
All right, so I think that may be a little simpler for some of us to digest that way. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Farrell.
And I have, you know, I appreciate the latitude that my colleagues have given me, but I cannot vote for the banana amendment. Not that I have anything against bananas, but I would like to reserve that future council still be able to pass, should they ever decide to do in-house the mental health tax on a majority of 4, which is how the legislature intended it. Considering some new things that have come to light recently, I think that's pretty important. So I'll be voting no on the amendment, but I thank my colleagues for allowing me to make prior amendments.
Okay, anyone else before we go to public comment? Okay, this is a public hearing, and if there's anyone here that would like to comment for or against, Council Amendment number 2 on banana only, please come forward, state your name for the record, and keep your remarks to 3 minutes or less.
Ken Paulson. I'm hard pressed to differentiate between one set of taxes that you don't get to vote on and another set of taxes that is the super majority. It's, they should all be super majority or not, probably, to be consistent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I will close public comment, return it to the council. Any final comments from the members before we vote? Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I supported the previous amendment. I think it is a good amendment. It's forward-looking. Again, we're not starting until 2013 on what the legislature might do. But I think the council as a whole would kind of see what is coming down. The legislature is starting to push things on down to the local level. So I think that's a good step. The yellow amendment, or banana amendment, simply strengthens that and gives a little more taxpayer protection on a couple of taxes that are currently we have here, but have not been implemented. So I think this is just to supplement again what the first amendment was, and would urge your support.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, the clerk, please call the roll on this one.
Councilmember Bush?
Aye.
Councilmember Farrell?
No.
Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Meary?
Aye.
Councilmember Roach?
Aye.
Councilmember Talbot?
No.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
The amendment passes on a vote of 5 to 2.
Thank you. Now that brings us to the underlying proposal, 2012-15S as amended. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone here who would like to comment for or against proposed ordinance 2012-15S, please come forward, state your name for the record, and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Councilmember Uri.
Point of order, should that be 2012-15 as amended?
Isn't that what I said? Hold on.
Make sure we.
Yeah, I thought I did, but go ahead. Is that correct, Susan?
It is as amended.
Okay. Okay, and this is a public hearing. If there's there's anyone here who'd like to comment for or against proposed ordinance 2012-15S as amended, please come forward and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, I will close public comment and return it to the council. The final remarks, Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make, share, I want to thank Councilmember Farrell for his work to compromise. For those of us who had opinions one way or another regarding this bill, we didn't get everything that we wanted, but I believe that this is a good start. It moves us forward in the right direction in terms of being responsible when it comes to issues affecting taxes. I know it was a tough road for many of the council members, but I just wanted to say publicly thank you to Councilmember Farrell for his work to work out this compromise and go forward from there. And I can support it now as it has been rolled up and substituted. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Farrell.
And I want to thank my colleagues for the amount of discretion that they have given me over the past couple of weeks to come with some kind of compromise. Unfortunately, you know, every so often we have a little sticking point, and for me, allowing to keep mental health at majority of 4 is a real sticking point for me. For future councils may decide to go down that path, and I'm not willing really to block it there. So as much as I would like to have voted for final passage, came close, but not close enough. And I want to appreciate and give some extra credit to council members McDonald, Roach, and Bush for being willing to work with me on this and try to come to some kind of solution that I think is better for the taxpayers in general. But for personal reasons for myself, I'm not able to meet you all the way. But you know, thanks for working with me. I really appreciate it. Being the bottom of the 2-holder minority, it's always nice to have folks willing to cross the aisle and work with you. So hats off and thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Seeing no one with the clerk, please, excuse me, Councilmember Talbot.
Sorry I was late there.
It's all right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to say against the proposal, and I voted no on both of the amendments as well, just to be consistent. I made extensive comments last week as to my concerns over this issue as it originally came forward and as it was amended. And my comments remain not focused on the specific intent of the legislation. It's not that I have a problem necessarily with the concept of a supermajority, but my concern remains with the process in which we are amending the charter, and my continued belief that the proper and best way for the charter to be amended is through extensive review that is made possible by Charter Review Commission, which we are going to be convening, if not next year, in the next couple of years. It allows for public debate, extensive conversation. This issue, as demonstrated just earlier with the confusion over what the amendment does or doesn't do, is still very much up in the air as to what the outcome of this action is going to be. I've also asked and was granted last week an extension of a week to have further conversation, which I appreciate. I believe we still have more conversation that would be beneficial to this, and we certainly have the time. This is not required to be voted on for at least 10 more weeks. So I personally wish that we could either extend this or put it off until Charter Review could give it the review and consideration it deserves. But I will be voting against it.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments from the clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Talbert?
No.
Councilmember Bush?
Aye.
Councilmember Farrell? Councilmember Fleming?
Aye.
Councilmember Meary?
Aye.
Councilmember Roach?
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
The ordinance passes on a vote of 5 to 2.
Thanks, Ms. Schultz. That brings us to ordinance number 2, proposed order, Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move adoption of proposed ordinance number 2012-23S.
Second.
Moved and and seconded to approve proposed ordinance 2012-23S. Would the clerk, you just had to read it into the, no, I didn't. Would you please read the title into the record?
Yes, Madam Chair. Proposal number 2012-23S. An ordinance of the Pierce County Council prohibiting discharge of firearms within the unincorporated portions of Section 2, Township 17, Range 4 East of the Willamette Meridian in the Graham area. Thank you, Ms. Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This proposal was heard in the Public Safety and Human Services Committee on May 14th and received a due pass as substituted recommendation. State law allows counties to enact ordinances restricting the discharge of firearms in any portion of their jurisdictions where there's a reasonable likelihood that humans, domestic animals, or property will be jeopardized. And authorize counties to designate certain areas to do so. And our code does this as well. Our code also provides for a petition process to initiate a firearms restricted area. In this case, there is a copy of the petition filed requesting a restricted area. Our Firearms Advisory Commission did take this issue under advisement. It held a hearing on October 14, 2010 to consider the request. They took testimony in a public meeting, and they looked at the fact that they were relatively small acreage parcels. They stated about 4 to 5 acres apiece. There were homes in the area. The topography was relatively flat. And after considering all testimony, the commission agreed 4-0 to recommend a firearms restriction in this area. And again, it is in the Graham area. You have a map that shows the location and the parcel sizes. And this proposal would take the Firearm Advisory Commission recommendation and enact a restricted area. And I will note that there is one amendment on Lavender for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Long. Councilmember Talbot, let's get the council amendment number 1 before us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move adoption of council amendment number 1 on Lavender.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt council amendment number 1 on Lavender. Ms. Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This proposal would amend the title and add a whereas and amend both sections of the ordinance to essentially allow this to be the same area, but allow it to be a shotgun only restriction. So shotguns would be allowed, but no other firearms in this area.
Thank you. Councilmember Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was hopeful that the underlying ordinance would be acceptable to the body, but not knowing what the thinking of individuals are, I would be willing to meet this amendment with a favorable vote if we could add an oral amendment to it. And that oral amendment would be immediately following the addition of except shotguns, wherever that appears appropriately, that we also add the words using shot. The reason being, if you use a slug, you get back into the rifle type of thing, and you have more damage possible. It has more range, and I think if you know, it's not an area where people hunt. Not any hunting birds in this area, so it's not a matter of sporting prohibition. I think that if we did this, people could do some skeet shooting, recreational shooting that would not put their neighbors hopefully in danger, and I think it might be a reasonable compromise going forward, allowing that kind of recreational use, but just putting in just a tighter shelter for people's safety. So I would offer an oral amendment, as I described it, adding additionally after the words except shotguns wherever it appears and is appropriate, the words using shot. So
Thank you. Ms. Long, would be appropriate now then to vote on the oral amendment before I have take public comment on the Lavender amendment as a motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to add the word using shot after each area that says except shotguns or other than shotguns. Is there any comment before we vote? We don't need to take comment on the oral amendment, do we, public comment? Or do we?
It's not required, it's up to you.
I'd rather go ahead and vote on the oral amendment after Councilmember Roach speaks, and then we will take public comment either as amended or not amended. Thank you. Councilmember Roach, you still want to speak?
I just wanted to
Yes.
say, yeah, I consider this a friendly amendment, and it's
Okay.
true that there are people who use a slug, which is, it's not shot, it's versus quickly. So I think that's a good amendment, we should accept it.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to add the word using shot as an oral amendment after the shotguns words on the Lavender amendment. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us back to the Lavender amendment number 1 as amended. And this is a public hearing, and if there's anyone here that would like to comment for or against the Lavender amendment as amended, please come forward, state your name for the record, and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. My name is Chris Grant, and I'm the author of the petition. I live in this area in Graham and met with the homeowners, and a majority of the homeowners wanted a restricted area. I do like to thank the Public Safety and Human Service Committee passing this, and I also would expect that the committee, or the commission, excuse me, would trust the work of the Firearms Commission that voted unanimously that this be a no shooting zone. As we talked in the meeting here 2 weeks ago, the Public Safety Committee, it was brought up by Councilmember Roach to allow shotguns. What happens when you start allowing things and disallowing things makes law enforcement's job much tougher. When people are shooting, they're shooting in an area, and the recommendation or the comment was for skeet. Skeet, you're shooting in the air. You have no registered backstop, you have no safety plan in place. Where the homes are, they're fairly tight in some areas and some are larger. I have a larger property. My home sits in the middle of 10 acres. I've had shot fall onto my roof. With no registered backstop or safety appliance in place, there is no guarantee that shot will not damage. If we go to the International Hunter Education Association, we take a look at the range of shot and slugs. They're anywhere from about 175 yards for number 9 shot, all the way to 780 yards for slugs. If there's shooting out there and law enforcement is en route and they come and they go look, now they're going to have to get into a more tense situation to see what kind of weapon was used, what kind of shot was used, was it shot, what was the backstop, and it's going to tie up law enforcement. The community that lives there has voiced their opinion and said we want no shooting. Public safety for our families, our animals, and our property. So I would ask that the council accept 100% of the commission's, the advisory commission's request to make this no shooting and to say no to the Lavender request. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, I will close public comment and return it to the council. Any final comments before we vote on the Lavender amendment? Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to comment on the amendments and some of the prime sponsors here. Going through this, I read what happened with community members, the issues they had, or they took it to the advisory commission. And what it seemed to be was a single bad actor out there that has been firing high-powered rifles and whatnot. And in my opinion, it looked like a safety issue as well. So I totally understand that. I get that high-powered rifles, especially on flat ground, is a safety issue and something we need to take action on. But what I didn't understand was why are we doing a blanket ban of firearms, especially when I looked at some of the parcels and some of them up to 10 acres, where I feel you should shoot a shotgun in a safe manner. And it was mentioned, that while I think it's great that the community members got together, the majority of them said, we want this to ban. As a representative, sometimes my job is to represent that majority or the minority that is not represented out there. And what I heard was, again, you've got one bad actor. You do have a few others out there that do enjoy recreational shooting once in a while. And unfortunately, they get caught up in this whole thing. So my intent here is to protect that minority, that are law-abiding citizens who are doing a recreational thing they enjoy doing, they can do it safely, and I don't think we need to do blanket bans when there's one bad actor out there. I think we need to be a little more attuned to the other needs out there as well. And I think this is a good compromise to where I think it will solve the problem out there. I think everyone can speak to this, but once you do a no parking ordinance, for example, people tend to realize, okay, there's no parking and they don't park there anymore. So you don't have to actually go through and tow the cars off and everything, but people usually respect the law. And in extreme circumstances, of course, the law enforcement can come in and take care of that. But I think by having the ban in place and having the neighbors and everyone know what's going on, that's going to be enough to be the deterrent that will solve the problem that I think you've seen in the community. And at the same time, I think we can at least salvage some shooting rights in that area for shotguns. So that's why I opted up and I would ask for a yes vote.
Seeing no other comments, all in favor of Council Amendment number 1 on Lavender as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No? No? No. Sorry.
3 times over.
No, it's a no. So the motion carries. So that brings us to the underlying proposal which is proposed ordinance 2012-23S as amended. So this is a public hearing, and if there's anyone who would like to speak for or against the underlying proposal as amended, please come forward, state your name for the record, and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, I will close public comment and turn it to the council. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make a quick comment. I wanted to thank the gentleman who just spoke regarding opposition for the amendment that we just passed. I know when we looked at this bill in the committee, one of the things I heard from several people afterwards was this was an issue of First Amendment rights. I just wanted to state for the record, and for those who are watching, this is not really a First or Second Amendment rights versus speech. Second Amendment rights. What I want to address specifically is this is a safety issue, and I believe that the committee looked at that. I know the Firearms Commission looked at it very carefully. I believe the recommendation that they sent to the council, the recommendation our committee has sent to the council is a good recommendation, and as Councilmember Roach pointed out quite succinctly, that it really does strike a balance, if you will, for the community out there, for those who are responsible, and for those who understand the responsibility of discharging firearms. So I feel comfortable in supporting the amended bill that's before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one, would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Madam Chair. Councilmember Leary,
Aye.
Councilmember Roach,
Aye.
Councilmember Talbot,
Aye.
Councilmember Bush,
Aye.
Councilmember Farrell,
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming,
Aye.
Councilmember McDonald.
Aye.
The ordinance passes on a vote of 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. That brings us to item